Hello and welcome once again to The Booking Club, the podcast that brings you today's leading authors and commentators from a table at their favourite places to eat and drink. On this episode, I'm speaking to Matthew Sweet, author of Bookish, adapted from the TV series starring Mark Gatiss, among others. We meet to discuss this murder mystery and countless other books Matthew's been working on since. Okay, listeners, at my next guest's behest, I'm breaking a poppadom into the mic. I hope you heard that. Forgive the hush voice. Last night I was at Wembley Stadium watching Oasis's last UK date. Fantastic experience though that was. It's left me feeling a slightly worse for wear today. But nonetheless, delighted to be here at Gurkha's in Sydenham, talking about a book based on a screenplay that many of you may have heard of and even watched. It's on Sky. It's called Bookish. The book of the same name is written by Dr. Matthew Sweet.
Oh, we're using honorifics.
Quoting the Twitter handle, of course. Hello and welcome and thank you,
Jack.
Matthew Sweet, for joining me. This is your favourite restaurant in Sydenham.
We are spoilt for choice here. You know, we could have gone to Trattoria Raffaelli, which is a very good Italian, which I think must be on TripAdvisor because it's like, you know, you sometimes see Chinese tourists there and you think, how on earth do they know about this? Or we could have gone next door to a place called Chef's Delight, but that's a kind of, I won't say greasy spoon, but it's a kind of, all-day breakfast place. It's a real community hub round here. If you're sort of in trouble in any way, you could go there and they would help you out. And I've seen this happening to people who, they look after people, you know, people who are in the community and a bit in trouble. I've seen the guys in there, like, kind of making sure that they've got their lunch and, you know, putting their tea in a bag for them and that kind of thing.
That's true hospitality, isn't it?
Also, it's had its front redone because there was a weird event there last year where armed police raided it, thinking there was a hostage crisis going on there, and there wasn't. It was empty. Nothing next door, through that brick wall there, and but nothing was happening. So I think the police might have actually, you know, battering ram their way in there because it's got a nice new front now, thanks to the local constabulary.
Wow.
But Gurkha, I've been coming here for 20 years, and it is my local Nepalese curry house, and I hope you're going to enjoy it.
I'm certainly sure I will. Need I ask where you get inspiration to write murder mysteries from?
Yeah, well, nobody died there. That wasn't a myth. The mystery was, where were the hostages? There were no hostages. Mysterious, isn't it?
Very mysterious. Almost as mysterious as the story in the book we're about to discuss.
Okay.
Bookish, then.
Yeah.
Tell us where the writing of Bookish began.
Bookish is a TV series created by Mark Gatiss, and I've written some of it with him. It's set in a bookshop. It's 1946. Hero, Gabriel Book, is in a lavender marriage with his wife Trotty, who runs the wallpaper shop the next door. They solve crimes with the help of Jack, who is Book's protege in a mysterious way that I won't reveal too much about, and with a young woman called Nora, who is the daughter of a restaurateur, Turkish restaurateur who lives across the road. So it's 1946, and everything that implies, you know, rationing. Everybody's quite cold a lot of the time, and also this really interesting post-war world where there are a lot of guns around, a lot of hope, a lot of deprivation, and a lot of rough, tough people. Yeah,
I watched the first 3 episodes of Bookish on Sky, and I didn't know that the UK was awash with guns after the Second World War.
Soldiers took them as souvenirs, you know.
Yeah.
Plucked them from the cold bodies of Nazis and brought them back home. So there were a lot of guns knocking around. And there was a lot of debate, really, about whether there was a crime wave, post-war crime wave taking place, because you know, there were a lot of deserters knocking around on the streets, and there was a lot of anxiety about all of these men who were armed, who it was feared would turn to crime. Whether or not it was really happening was much debate. It was certainly happening in the newspapers.
I know it might sound like we're getting sidetracked, but this is historical fiction. What did they do to get rid of, or to filter out, or to seize these guns?
I don't know whether there was a a sort of policy. There wasn't an amnesty over them. There wasn't I think people just kept them in their bottom drawers,
Right.
really. But they did circulate. They were being bought and sold. But I'm not aware of I'll follow it up. I don't know. I'm not aware that there was a kind of a policy to try and get them all back.
Well, listen, the story, as you say,
Yes.
is set in post-war UK, dark streets, rationing. But what about these characters? How did they come about?
They were just kind of too delicious, really. And you know what? When you ask me a question like that, it's really hard to reconstruct the process of their construction because they were there in a document that Mark had written before anybody else had arrived. What happened was that he met a couple of producers at the Radio Times covers party who said to him, "Have you ever thought of doing a detective show?" And he said, "Oh, I happen to have a script." And actually the whole thing got going really, really quickly. This was quite a fast process in television terms, but Eagle Eye, the production company, is very kind of fast and lean, a small outfit, but makes a lot of good stuff, uses facilities in Belgium a lot of the time, which is where most of Bookish was shot.
Really?
That's the Belgian tax shelter, makes your money go a bit further.
Interesting.
We wouldn't have been able to afford it to have shot it all here, though we did get a bit of time in London and a bit more for the coming series as well. So but the interesting about doing something like this is that you write the script, then you write the next draft, and then you write the next draft, and it all moves and it all changes, and then people get cast, and then you watch it. And you literally can't remember the version of it that was in your head at the beginning. Particularly, you can't remember those versions of those characters that were in your head before the actors were cast. So I know that at one point I sat down in the 4 episodes of this that I led on for the first series, and those characters were sort of entities in my mind. Once they were cast, it's really weird. Your memory gets wiped. I can't look at. If I looked at the script, I would not be able to kind of summon, the image I had in my head of Jack.
But before
you had Jack was
an
cast.
image.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Mark was going to be in it. Elliot Levy, who plays Inspector Bliss, he was a fixture from the start. But when we began writing, nobody else was in place. But yeah, the mind is strange.
It's a fantastic cast. How much of a hand did you have in overseeing that?
Well, there are 1 or 2 people who I suggested, and thankfully people agreed, and thankfully they said yes.
But did you suggest them based on the ideas that you had about these characters?
Well, I'll tell you one. In my head, a character called Mr. Kind, who appears in the 2 episodes, the final 2 episodes of the first series that are set in a grand hotel, I always had in my head as Paul McGann. And rather delightfully, Paul was free, and there he is, and it's so. And as soon as he's there, you think, blimey, I should have written in more scenes, because everything he does suddenly looks really significant. That's the great thing about actors. They start performing it, and suddenly this other dimension opens up.
What's that like to witness?
It's really, there's something slightly occult about it, really. I'm standing there on the location, just looking at it on the monitor, really, and thinking, yes, I did write this, but I didn't write that the way that his glasses catch the light at that point, or I didn't write the way that he looks at somebody walking down the corridor, and you sort of have some sense of what might be going on in his mind. I didn't do any of that.
Whatever your executive powers to intervene, do you find yourself broadly open to whatever the actor does to interpret what you've written? Or do you ever feel a pang of, oh, no, it's not quite meant to be like that?
The only thing I would say to that is there are some things where there is the rhythm of a line reading isn't what you had in your head. And sometimes that's better than the version you had. I can think of one where I really wanted a line to run in a certain way because it was actually an allusion to a radio comedy catchphrase from Itmar, the wartime radio show that everybody loved, but became quickly better known for being something that nobody understood because all the catchphrases kind of were things unto themselves, and it became almost like a kind of joke about nobody would understand it anymore because nobody knows what "don't forget the diver" or whatever meant.
What does it mean now? I'm sure lots of people who have no idea.
Who knows? The secrets are lost. But some of them are wartime jokes.
Yeah.
And one of them was about a char lady called Mrs. Mop, whose catchphrase was, "Can I do you now, sir?" And so I needed that to be said in the same rhythm that the actress in the show said it in the 40s, because everybody would know it.
Yeah.
But like, there's no reason why, a kind of 20-year-old actor working in 2025 would ever have heard of it, never mind know what the rhythm of that catchphrase was. So things like that, where you bring I suppose that's a bit of historical knowledge.
What do you like to order when you come here, Matthew?
Well, I always start with what we've got here, because like how the poppadom is
You mean
is pleasantly unavoidable. Yeah, that one. Yeah,
that was great.
I'll tell you what,
that was a good snap.
I usually order off the specials menu, and I like to order fish. And I'm thinking though that for this meal, that one of us at least should order something that makes a sound. There are things that sizzle here.
I'm pretty set on the sizzler.
If you like beer, have the Gurkha beer.
I'm afraid to say, Matthew, I overdid it last night.
Oh, so you won't be doing... Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Well, maybe we should have a look at the menu.
Order? This is
let's have a look at the menu, see what we'd like to order. I'd be very interested to know what sort of fish dish you order. Fish curries tend to be a bit of an acquired taste. Most people either go for lamb or chicken. And
well, I don't eat lamb or chicken, you see. I don't eat, I suppose, things with voices. I'm not a vegetarian, but I've not eaten meat since I was at university.
That's the first time I've heard somebody say that they don't eat anything with a voice.
That screams or yell, or I suppose lobsters make a noise, don't they, when they go into... But that's their shells, isn't it?
Yeah, and yes,
you don't like lobsters. See, I've done my research too. You're afraid of them, I think, aren't you? Is it like Alien, like the face huggers in Alien?
There's nothing appetizing about eating an alien.
I really like seafood, but I discovered once in demolishing a crab at a restaurant in Brighton that the crab had a sort of revenge on me, that I was not allergic to eating it, but there was something about the shell of the crab that my skin was allergic to. So it was like it had...
interesting.
The crab gave me a kind of urticaria. Is that the word?
A rash.
Yes, that's right.
I see. But it wasn't an allergic reaction.
I think it must have been, because it was like the crab had its revenge upon me.
It's funny what you say about the voice, though. For me, the most compelling secular notion of the soul is the voice. It's bodily, but it's ethereal. It's the thing which you can't point to and quantify, but which contains all of us.
Really, my thought is that I don't want to eat anything that I feel I couldn't kill with my own... Not quite with my own bare hands. Maybe with my own bare hands. No, I couldn't wrestle a cow to the death. But I used to keep fish. So I have had to euthanize them in the past. So that's why fish.
Euthanized?
Well, if they get sick and sometimes they go past the point
killing
of
a
no
fish,
return.
Matt. Euthanasia would imply consent, wouldn't it?
Oh, I suppose it would, wouldn't it? Yes. Yeah, I've never... I don't think a fantail can give its consent, can it? Well, after all that, I'm certainly going to have the steamed fish on the specials menu.
I can see our waiter walking to our table now. The time has come.
With a paper pad, I'm glad to see. Yeah. Because the
Traditional one.
They've been sneaking in the electronic ones, I've noticed, in the last year or so.
When you were writing the show set in this period of time, you mentioned already the kind of research that's required to write a plausible backdrop to a story like this. Does it make sense to ask in what way you feel people were different in the aftermath of the Second World War? Is it possible to capture the psychology of the country
it is, really.
around that time?
I think it is, because and it's a time period I feel I've spent quite a lot of time wandering around in. I feel if you did drop me there, I would be able to negotiate it. But it's a time where there's there's a lot of exhaustion, there's a lot of exuberance, but there's also this sense, I think, for a lot of people of of reckoning a bit with what they did in the war, because not everybody has behaved in the most virtuous kind of way. There's a sense of like moral retrenchment for some people as well, like the the kind of more, oh, look, here comes thank you very much.
The Gurkha beer.
Yeah.
Look at that. I love the label on that.
Exactly.
The Gurkha soldier
been
on the
same
front.
Forever,
That's fantastic.
The question of what you did in the war is a big one. And I think the thing that really interests and attracts me, and you can see this turning up in the crime fiction of the period. If you look at the novels of Edmund Crispin, for instance, or just look at movies from this period as well, you'll see that it's a kind of a golden age of a sort of middle class crime. I think there's a lot of like 9 bob wing commanders propping up golf club bars, lying about their records, and I think there's that idea that the officer class, whatever their record was, can assert their authority in the peacetime. And of course there's a lot of resentment about that. It is often said to be the moment when deference died. In fact, I have a story that was told to me by the head barman at the Savoy, Joe Gilmore, who said that lots of people of that generation have a story about that. I think Tony Benn told a story, or Dennis Healy, perhaps. I can't remember which of it was now, about a change in, the attitude of men to officers, for instance, creeping in. And he had a story to crystallize it. But Joe Gilmore told me this story about a customer clicking their fingers in the Savoy bar, and his colleague saying, "Excuse me, sir, have you lost your dog?" And he said that nobody would have done that before 1945. So those adjustments are happening, I think.
Are those the first murmurings of a counterculture?
I think they're more a reaction against, the kind of the necessary hierarchies of living in a wartime state.
Those who benefited from it, wanting to extend that authority.
Yeah. And also there's people are exhausted by that kind of deference. And they're also, I think, exhausted by having to be done for the collective as well. That's why it's such an interesting moment. You've got this huge mandate, for the building of the welfare state, but so much dissatisfaction with it from the start, and cynicism about it too. So I think, we're apt to look back on that moment as one of kind of, like a kind of rosy forward march. But that, just going back to it again recently for the next book I'm writing, actually, which is a biography of Barbara Cartland, and how
which we
her
can talk
life
about.
in that moment. She was obviously very, she was a Tory. She stood as a Tory councillor later, and she was very hostile to Attlee and to the welfare state. But she wasn't alone in those views. So it was much more contested, I think, in 45, 46, 47 in that administration than I think the sort of the mythology of the time would lead you to believe.
Been reading a little bit around Barbara Cartland since finding out that you're writing the biography of her. Is she one of the most widely translated authors in the world?
Well, she is the 3rd best-selling author in history,
behind
Agatha Christie and Shakespeare.
Gosh. And yet a lot of people would never have heard of her.
Interesting, isn't it? She is, although she still can claim that position, she is barely read at all today. And, she sold 650 million books while she was alive. And wrote, I think the official number is 723, but she left 150 odd unpublished when she died. I think there might even be more than that. It's really hard to work it out because some got republished and slightly rewritten under different titles. And Barbara loved big numbers, but she didn't always care if they were too accurate. But those really big ones about her sales come from the publishers and not her. So, yeah. But yes, it's an extraordinary disappearing act. And even though the image of her, I think, survives in the head of the culture, as it were, in the cultural memory, partly through parody and mockery, the idea of the romantic novelist who lies on the chaise longue with her Pekingese and the rug over her knee and dictates a novel to a secretary. Current members of the Romantic Novelist Association still feel that image as a millstone around their necks. And I think, are slightly frustrated that they can't exorcise the ghost of Barbara. But she's there. But she is unread, I think, because her readers died with her. Her readers were, well, she wrote from the 20s, so the first generation of readers are those interwar women,
right.
The so-called surplus women.
Right.
And then, after the Second World War, there's a similar kind of audience for her. Although the audience was a lot wider, I think, than the cliches would lead you to believe. It wasn't all, the core of her readers were not, unmarried women who wanted husbands and couldn't get them.
That's extraordinary. The third most widely read author in history. And yet, with serious unrelatability to today, hence you say her audience died out with her. That's incredible.
Well, I think they were...
It's almost as though everybody at one time in history was reading her.
Well, I think that a lot of people read her, a lot of women read her. They were from... I would say that the core of her audience were very young women, teen and teenage girls. Princess Diana was one of them.
Who she wasn't a particular fan of.
Oh, no, she was.
Yeah, you're quite right. It wasn't that she wasn't a fan. The quote that I'm thinking of that led me to say that was one that was just as slightly insensitive and sardonic, where she said of Diana, the only books Diana ever read were mine, and they weren't awfully good for her.
Yeah, well, I think in a way that's a moment of self-knowledge there, isn't it? That Barbara knows that... I mean, Barbara knew that her novels were fantasies because they don't really match up with her own life. And, yes, she did think that that perhaps... the idea of, I mean, there were always more dukes than princes in her fiction, but I think she thought that she might have misled Diana about life a little through her fiction.
It's important to talk about this forthcoming biography because you've been very prolific this year. Bookish, been adapted, as I say, from the screen. There's a new season of Bookish in production that might be coming out, I think, next year. Meanwhile, you've got the New Forest Murders.
Yes, that came out in June.
We were debating whether or not to talk about that book or this one. You're a bookish guy, clearly.
It's nothing compared with Barbara. Barbara wrote 20 a year. Barbara could write a book in a fortnight.
I bet she could.
She could actually. No, I'm sorry. I'm doing her down there. She could write a book in 7 days. Perhaps we should try it. You wake up at 9 o'clock. You answer your correspondence. You have breakfast in bed. You have lunch. Then you lie down on the chaise longue at 1. You produce 7,000 words. You're off the chaise longue by 4 o'clock.
It's like what somebody said about Paul McCartney. He could fall down at the foot of a piano, and by the time he was back on his feet, have written 3 songs. Well, we're getting away slightly from Bookish.
Yes.
Of course, the literary theme of Bookish is that much of it takes place in a bookshop.
Yes. We always thought in our minds was like some version of the kind of bookshop that you will see if you go to London and go to Cecil Court. It's not shot on Cecil Court, and it's not, the ecology of it is not the same because Books is the only bookshop on Archangel Lane, and Cecil Court is essentially a row of bookshops. But there's something kind of slightly arcade-like and enclosed about it. And the shop's role really is, it's the way that Book solves crimes, investigates the world. It's like a kind of analog computer. Book knows that, as we all do, that the answers to most things are to be found in books. And he, in a way, is the detective who does his reading and checks the footnotes and this kind of thing. And he's not a super being as well. He only, he has to do his homework and read up. We were very clear that we didn't want him to have like kind of magical abilities. He's not Doctor Who.
Just a genius IQ.
Yeah.
But of course, Mark Gatiss played Sherlock Holmes' brother, Mycroft, in the TV series. So it's interesting to see him, having played that part, switch to a very Holmesian character.
He's the hero now.
Who's now
he's the hero now,
right.
Isn't he? He's a good man. He's, he's a man with a broken heart, really, too.
You always get the feeling, don't you, that people who own bookshops are nursing a broken heart.
They've always got a story. They've always got a story of people in bookshops, and there's a very good bookshop on where we are now, Kirkdale Books. And
just on this road?
Just up there.
Always go to independent bookstores.
Yes. Many fascinating characters have worked there and continue to work there who are a fixture of my life here. Yeah, they've all got stories. But I think it's... I've worked in the profession myself briefly. When I was a student, I used to work in the... two places in Blackwell's in Oxford. I worked in the rare book section, where I occasionally had to physically tackle shoplifters who try to run off with like Dylan Thomas screenplays and first editions of one sort or another.
Was it mainly your section?
Well, that was where the most valuable stuff was.
Yes.
And I was just there on my own.
Were you prepared?
It was very. I mean,
to do that. Or did they say, by the way, you're going to have to do push-ups?
Nobody even mentioned it, but somehow. Oh, I know. My main memory is I do remember seeing this guy put. I know it was the script of the film version of The Doctor and the Devils, and I saw him put it inside a kind of padded jacket. And I went over to him and said, "Did you just do what I think you did?" And he did sort of, he did hand it over. But I do remember, like, grabbing somebody once who was running out with one. Don't know. I don't feel like your really hardcore criminal is going to steal anything from a rare bookshop. I don't think you're going to get kind of a knuckle duster in your face, are you?
No, true. Although, if that is going to happen, it's probably going to happen in a book like Bookish or in the second season of Bookish, isn't it?
Well, yes, well, the bookshop, things do have to, the bookshop is the heart of the story.
Yeah.
So,
because he has a very interesting system, doesn't he,
Yeah.
Mr. Book? The arrangement of the books is very intricately coded.
There is a moment where Jack, the new rival in the shop, thinks he's helping by alphabetizing some of the shelves, and this is sacrilege because he's got his own system for working out where everything is. That they're all jokes, really, just about.
To all you hardworking small business owners out there, if you're tired of feeling invisible online, there's a solution to that. Total Solutions. It's your modern-day Yellow Pages. You could be a service provider looking for more clients or someone simply searching for the right pro to get the job done. Either way, Total Solutions connects local businesses with local people. The platform has now surpassed 100 signups, and you can upload videos and pics of your services. So if you're seriously ready to grow your business, head to TotalSolutions.com and join the community. That's Total Solutions with a Z.com. And we're back. Remind me the name of the fish.
Tilapia. So it's not anything very unusual, but it was cooked. It was steamed very nicely. It was spicy, but it's kind of moist, but without having any sauce dimension to it. I think sometimes you are a bit kind of. Neither of us have gone for anything saucy. We've both had quite dry.
That's
quite
true.
dry for
a. But certainly fragrant and flavourful.
Yeah.
You were saying as we were eating, Matthew, that we'd both ordered probably the noisiest dishes that you could possibly order from Gurkha's.
Well, we have an instinct for it. Mine came wrapped in tin foil.
There we go.
And when that opened up, it produced great clouds of steam.
A really generous, mixed grills tend to be, but just an enormous amount of meat, more than I actually could finish.
Yeah. This is like Sydenham's living room. This
lovely way of
everybody
it.
Comes here. We're here early on a Monday night, but it gets very, very full towards the weekend.
We chose a good day to come.
Yeah.
The books that you grew up reading, am I right in guessing that many of them were murder mysteries?
Well, I was always a big Conan Doyle fan. I remember I won a book token at school once, and I bought what I thought was the complete Sherlock Holmes stories. And then I discovered that it wasn't, and that there were some that weren't there. And I think about 6 months later, I took the book back to Smith and said, "Look, I thought this looks very much like it was like a gift book. It had like one of those weird padded covers. It looked like it was like a kind of facsimile Victorian book." And they, very kindly said, "Oh no!" And I came home with the Penguin complete Sherlock Holmes. And so those stories kind of got into my bloodstream. But I also liked, as a child, the first novel I ever read was John Wyndham's The Day of the Triffids. I've always had a thing about the apocalyptic. I quite like what Brian Aldiss called the cozy catastrophe. Those stories where sort of everybody gets wiped out, but you can go through the streets helping yourself to tins of pineapple chunks, and they'll probably never run out.
Which is sort of dystopian based on the child's fantasy of being left in a world without adults.
It is that, yeah. I mean, in a way, Day of the Triffids obviously most of the population of the world is blinded and then get hunted down by the Triffids. But so society is destroyed, but with it comes what Wyndham is really hoping for, the destruction of the institution of marriage, which you can sense him breathing a great sigh of relief about. I'll share with you because this is like, there's no other context where anybody will ask me about this, but Gisela Playton, the heroine of Day of the Triffids, is a bit of a cause célèbre because she wrote this book called Sex is My Adventure, which kind of caught my eye as a child. It was only doing my research on Barbara Cartland that I realised that the name of this book is a pun on the title of a book called God is My Adventure, by a slightly kind of mystic anthropologist called Rom Landau, who tried to get Barbara Cartland's brother into bed, and they had this rather intense non-sexual relationship. But there you are. So if I was books, I would put Day of the Triffids next to Rom Landau's God is My Adventure, and I'd know why those two things went together. But nobody else would. In fact, I'll use that.
I'm not sure if you're aware of Sherlock Holmes' story, The Norwood Builder.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
So
I won't give away the ending.
Well,
but his thumbprint is very important.
Yeah, as you know, South Norwood is my neck of the woods,
Yes.
not far from you.
Yeah.
And on one particular road is a former residence of Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. You know the blue plaque?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it must be while he was based there that he wrote The Norwood Builder. You may know this for certain. I only guessed it.
Well, it's the thing about the Norwood Builder is that I think it was only builders who lived in those big houses, because most of the big houses in our neighbourhoods are built by speculative builders. So, I don't know what kind of household you live, but we live in a big divided Victorian house that's been divided into 3 flats. But I think that most of those big houses were always divided up like that because they were built as shells. Most of them didn't even have the floors in. You put those in yourself when you moved in.
The floors?
Yeah.
Like the boards?
The actual boards, yeah.
What, and it was just dirt floors?
Perhaps the ground floor would have been done, but they were sort of shells.
Oh.
And you bought them.
How strange.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can end this episode, Matthew, with a reading from Bookish.
Are we at the end already? I feel I've made this conversation all digressions.
No, it's been fantastic.
And we get this with I don't know if this is coming through, but we've got a kind of Spanish guitar backing towards it, which of course is very appropriate for a Nepalese restaurant. Oh, it's changed. The
He
piano.
overheard you.
Yeah.
Quick, change the playlist.
So, this is where the character who is really our way into the story, Jack, has just been released from Whitechapel prison, which doesn't exist, and he's on his way to Archangel Lane because he has been summoned there rather mysteriously. He finds, on leaving prison, that he has a job. London bus routes, Jack was relieved to discover, had changed little since the bolts had been thrown behind him. The number 15 still ran east to west from Stepney Methodist Church past St Paul's Cathedral and the Aldwych to Charing Cross. The streets through which it moved, however, had been made strange by war. On the Whitechapel Road, rubble gathered in drifts. The teeth had been knocked out of the city. Once elegant buildings leaned on wooden crutches. The ghosts of air raid sticky tape haunted the windows of Fleet Street. The Royal Courts of Justice, he noticed, had survived without a scratch. As the bus rattled past, he averted his gaze from its entrance and read the newspaper vendors' boards clustered on the other side of the street. The Foreign Secretary had given a speech. Famine was imminent. Where? Jack wondered. In Germany? In England? Across the whole world? Jack had not expected peacetime London to dazzle him with technicolor, but he had hoped for more visible signs that the Allies had actually won the war. One of the warders had told him that in Berlin they were stripping wallpaper to make broth from the paste. Londoners, he noticed, also had a lean and hungry look. As he stepped off the bus, he caught a glimpse of himself reflected in a barber's shop mirror. Perhaps he had it too.
2 questions for you before we wrap up.
Yes.
1, what's the best book you've read this year so far?
Great one I read on holiday, Summer in Baden-Baden by Leonid Tispkin. This is a Russian writer in the 80s. The book is about Dostoevsky in Baden-Baden gambling away his money. It's the most extraordinary experimental novel. It's in the Faber editions. They're very good at pulling things that I've never heard of out of the back catalogue and into print. The sentences go on for pages. And it's about Dostoevsky's sister being thrown out of flat after flat and room after room in Baden-Baden as he loses all the money at the gambling tables. And I realised halfway through, I thought I kind of guessed what the secret of this book is, and it's that these long clause-filled paragraphs are mimicking the sound of the roulette ball going round and round the table and landing finally in the little groove. It's one of the most brilliant books I've ever read, I think. Hauntingly so.
You get to take any writer from any period of history out to dinner. Who do you take?
Oh, Wilkie Collins. I did my PhD on Wilkie Collins, but I'd ask him early in the evening before he started to take his laudanum and possibly fell asleep at the table. Yeah, maybe it would be more lunch than dinner, actually. But yes, no, he's the writer who I've spent the most time with, really, over the years, devoted kind of 5 years of my life to him. So he's the person who I would have all the questions for. Also, I think he'd be quite a good. He wouldn't bully you like Dickens. You could speak to him in a more equal kind of way, I think.
Matthew Sweet, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you very much for joining me on the Booking Club.
My pleasure.